Okay, so this part is about the design process. Just a reminder that permaculture has three main components. There's the ecology, the learning from nature, there's the ethics, and then thirdly, it is a design process. It's not just a series of particular techniques thrown together. And the design process is a way of empowering you to be able to get from A to B, to do projects in a really conscious and directed way. So the process that we're using here, and there are different ones, but this is quite a common one, is abbreviated SADIMET, and that stands for Survey, Analysis, Design or Decision, Implementation, Maintenance, and then Evaluation and Tweaking. The survey consists of a gathering of the information that we're starting with, from the point from where you're beginning to know where you're starting from, so that you know where to go to, which would be the design. In the survey there might be physical aspects, so if you did a land-based design, it would be things like finding out about the weather conditions, the normal climate patterns, so which way is the land turning, what's the aspect, so which way is the sun shining on it, what is the prevailing wind, the most usual wind, things like what's the soil like, and just have a really good sense of the physicalities. How is the water moving through, how much rainfall is there, those sorts of things. Also, are there buildings, what is there already on the land or in that place. And then also it's about finding out in terms of the resources available, so that could be people-based resources, skills and money, but it could also be physical things like a pile of wood or rocks or stones or particular plants. So whatever is available already to you, it's good to know the resources that you're starting with. And then the limits is really important to know what are the limitations to that project. And in case of wanting to build a house, it might be planning regulations, might be a limit to what you can do or build, for example. Other things are to do with knowing something about the people that might be using that land, so the clients to the project, and that could be yourself and it could be a whole community. So finding out about those people, what their wishes and their visions are, and their hopes for the project, what their particular skills are, what their lifestyles and habits are, so that you make it match. So if there's particular religion limitations, that you wouldn't put pigs for somebody from a Jewish religion who doesn't deal with pigs, for example. It's just making it really attuned and aligned. So all of those are effectively data gathering in the survey stage. Then taking that to the next stage of analysis. So this is looking at that data, and one of the most important things is from that identifying what the key functions are for that design. So really knowing what this design is for and taking some key directions for that. So it might be education, it might be food production, it might be energy generation, things like that. So that it helps you to stay really focused for your project, and any of the ideas you come up with, that they directly address what you're trying to achieve. The other thing that happens at the analysis stage is you revisit the ethics, and really making sure that they're addressed and everything you come up with fits within those earth care, people care, fair shares ethics. And then there are various ways and methods that we can apply the permaculture principles here. So making sure that things that we come up with have multiple functions, for example, that there's diversity, that you're using the stacking principle, and many more of those. So this is the point at which you're really trying to make the ideas mimic the patterns of nature. And so there's a leading on to the design and the decision-making stage, and part of that information that's going to fall out of the analysis will help you decide. So that at that point, knowing what the lie of the land is and where the sun will be and what things can work well together, outputs of one can form the inputs of another. That will all help to decide the relative location of things so that everything is in an optimum placement to really work well and be as close together so there's no wastage of energy as the person using the project. So this could look like, in a land-based design, this would look like a design map usually, where you're sketching out where things are going to be placed. And in a more invisible design or social design, it might look like an action plan. So knowing what you're going to be doing, then you need to start planning for the implementation, scheduling out what happens and what comes before what, and including in that planning also how the projects will be maintained. So in the case of tree planting, it might include pruning, for example, also needs to be scheduled in. And then at some point we need to just see how it's going and how it's working, and making sure that the feedback loops are used well. So evaluating how well we're meeting those functions that we initially set out, and then making any tweaks where necessary. And you could argue that these evaluation and tweaks are effectively like another survey, re-looking at the baseline of things and then revisiting the design process itself. So we're having basically a spiral or an ongoing process, always tweaking and improving. So that's the design process and the key framework we're going to work with. And here's just a couple of examples. So with the survey, you would often create something like a baseline map on which the key structures are available, main outline of buildings and land, and then you can make overlays on which you might identify things like the path of the sun. And here I've done one with what are the key areas that are walked, so that I know where the most frequent presence is of humans. And then various analysis things, looking at output, inputs, and a SWOT analysis, and then beginning with a sketch map of what might be placed there, using that same base map. And here's the client interview and the rainwater calculation, and then the final design with the plans sketched in and annotated. So that's just an example of a design. And a very different one, a more invisible design, if you like, was like this, drawing out and using a placement exercise with the ethics and the principles in mind to design a workshop, an environmental workshop for businesses. So it's still using all these ideas, but using them in a very different way, and then this would lead to a session plan or a timetable. So it can be used in very different ways.